Everyone does it, often multiple times on the same card. The audience has seen it ad nauseum, and it's probably the most unsafe dive a professional wrestler can do. And in my opinion, it's the least impressive to watch. The injuries from it are many. The close calls from it are countless. And there have been deaths as a result of this maneuver. As performers, we need to seriously reevaluate the risk-reward curve on the Tope suicida.
Another one of them, popping at the mouth or the side of his neck when he pouts, no argument, no rebuttal from. He ain't from my town, I don't know him, so I'm guessing he's a clown.
So, you just heard the words of former WCW wrestler Crowbar, who has now been on a sort of, let's say, crusade to have the suicide dive, aka the Tope suicida, banned from wrestling. Now, I'm not one for banning things. I don't know if we should just start banning stuff, but I will say the Tope suicida, aka the suicide dive, it's got to be in the top 5 most botched moves in the business, right? You have your overshooting, where people get too much momentum and then they launch themselves between the ropes and they barely get caught, if they get caught at all, and ends up in absolute anarchy where somebody almost breaks their goddamn neck, which is usually a Sasha Banks favorite. You know, Red Velvet is another one where, you know, it seems to be a thing with thin girls. You know, they get the propulsion, but then it's like they come in like a bullet and they can't stop it or control it in any way. Then you have the most famous ones, the undershooting. Those who get their legs caught in the ropes. Those who don't get enough air. You know, the Brie Bellers. They're just no athletic ability whatsoever in doing the move. Then, of course, you have your guys are too big to be doing this stuff. The Undertakers, you know, something like that. But when you think about it, what really is a good suicide dive? You know, is it the flying handshake, which is what Daniel Bryan has become to do, where everybody puts their hands up and their hands are touching and they catch him essentially hand to hand to prevent his head from hitting them, you know, which of course makes the suicide dive look weak. You know, there was a very pretty good suicide dive a couple weeks ago by Darby Allin on Brian Cage, where basically he just came in like a cannonball and just bounced right off of him. Like, that joint was sweet. But that was probably the best suicide dive I've seen and really paid attention to in a long time. Most suicide dives look like shit. You know, it looks like it's something easy for those guys to do, so therefore they do it. But I'm not sure I'm on the bandwagon of we should just ban it, right? I'm on a tip where we really should just limit the amount of people who can do it, and I do believe it's overdone. I will say that, you know, because it was at one point, especially in NXT and AEW, to a lesser degree in WWE, you would see a Tope suicida or a suicide dive pretty much in every other match. You know, like, it just became a thing everybody did. And I think that when I said it, you know, it's just an easy thing for people to do, is that it looks easy, right? It looks like, okay, all you gotta do is jump through the ropes. You know, you run and you jump through the ropes. And some people can make it look really good. I've seen some Io Shirai suicide dives that are pretty good. Santos Escobar can do a pretty good suicide dive. You know, I can see people who are trained luchadors. You know, they really get some momentum behind it, and it looks good. So that leads other people to try to do it. But the thing about the suicide dive when it compares to other high-risk moves is that most people don't try a shooting star press or a 450 splash without knowing really how to do it. You know, like, most people practice those moves 100 million times before they actually do it. Some people, you know, they, you know, try out a suicide dive before they do it. But the suicide dive has things that are beyond your control, like the ropes, like fatigue. You know, like, you know, one of the things was when Brock tried to do a suicide, you know, shooting star press rather, and he pretty much killed himself, is he tried to do it 20 minutes into a match. You know, like, when you're testing it out in the gym or whatever, you're pretty fresh. You know, you might be a little tired, but You're not 20 minutes into a match and then trying to do it. It's not the same thing. And that's really where the real threat of the Tope suicide is. Like, the movie is already dangerous, but, you know, everything in wrestling is dangerous. But the idea that anybody can do it, much like the pile driver, is one of those things where people think it's easy. They look at it like, oh, I can do that. And then they end up breaking somebody's neck or breaking their own, you know. So I'm not really sure where I land on this, whether we should ban it thing or not. I'm not exactly thrilled about it, and I do think that it's overused. When I see certain people do it, it's terrible because it's basically a flying hug, which sucks. You know, spears have become flying hugs too, essentially. But you also have the idea that some people, Sasha Banks is being one of them, Red Velvet almost broke her own neck with a suicide dive, is when you see it, you just see it, and it just does not. It looks dangerous. And it looks like, okay, you got away with it this time. Shotzi Blackheart is another one. You know, Shotzi is indestructible. After I saw her go through those chairs or whatever she did, I was like, man, she's all right. She'll be okay. You know, but most everybody else, I'm like, wait a minute. Let's not, you know. Now, hardly be it for me to treat wrestlers like delicate flowers who need protection. So I'm not going to say we need to outright ban it. And that's the reason why I'm not for banning it. You know, I don't think that people are, you know, need protection from themselves. I think they need to take risks. But I do think that some people should take fewer risks. And we need to say, hey, look, we're not going to have 100 suicide dives on this show. Certain people are going to take suicide dives because they can make it look good and it's, you know, respectable, at least to a degree. Other people just stay away from it. But that's just with dives in general. You know, any and all dives usually are overdone. But the suicide dive is frightening sometimes. You know, like it's like, oh, buddy, you're just waiting for the neck braces and everything else to come out. But let me know what you guys think. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. What do you guys think of the banning of the suicide dive? I'm on the fence. You know, I wouldn't be upset if it was banned, but I also don't believe in banning things to protect other people's health. I think that folks need to protect themselves. And if you don't think you can catch somebody, you don't take the move, and you don't think you can do it, you shouldn't do it. And I know that people are overconfident, but, you know, sometimes that's what the agents and all those producers and stuff are for. Is to tell them, like, look, what you're doing is unsafe. You know, it's going to catch up with you. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session. But you got an affection for no progression, regression. The best don't